A new MMO like just came out for a week and you can test it for free. It's honestly pretty good. Something that WoW should be a bit scared about because it's the only MMO that really is competing with their dungeon system, Mythic Plus. And it's doing it kind of better. Let's talk about it. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Go to my Ko-Fi if you want to support my content. And let's get into it. So, I'm here in the game already. You can see how it looks a little bit like, an MMO. And it obviously looks a bit different than it's very cartoony. I actually like I actually like a lot how it looks in that regard. The main thing about this game is that it's, you do dungeons just like in Mythic Plus, just like you would do in Mythic Plus. You just queue for them, you do them with your friends, with different people, and then you slowly, build up your skills and of course get better gear in order to do better and harder versions of them. You can see right here, for example, if I go to Game Finder, where is the Game Finder? There you Game Finder. You can see how you can go in here, just queue on, go in here into the difficulty that you want, and just queue for them, and it'll pair you up with someone who with the other roles, right? You also have, as you can see here, different Ascensions, which I guess are kind of like affixes and curses as well, but ascensions are almost like good things. Enemies receive 30% increased threat from damage dealers and healers. Enemies interrupt abilities and dispel effects deal 20% more damage. It's a little bit of both, right? All healing and absorb effects received by players were reduced by 25%. Dungeons and adventures must be completed within a time limit. That's of course the Mythic Plus little timer they usually have in World of Warcraft and various legacy. Enemies have learned new abilities, which is actually kind of cool. Until you get to +5s, you actually don't get the new abilities. It's very, very simple. But after that, boom, you get a bit of a harder one. Of course, you get more rewards as well by doing them harder, and then you start getting into the other ones as well, into the hardest difficulties. Empowered minions, a few non-bosses enemies in each dungeon are empowered, getting 100% health and 200% power. But when you kill them, you get your 20% health, 20% haste, and 20% more movement speed. So overall, you do something that is a bit harder, but of course, you also get yourself a positive, which is actually a big problem that something like WoW has, because of course affixes are usually bad. You get affected in some way and that is negative, and then that's it. In this, at least when you do, when you get affected by something negative, something good happens as well, which I think is actually pretty cool. There's a lot of cool stuff in this game like this. A lot of easier things. You don't need any add-ons, for example. You're just gonna see the little the nameplates are going to be here in the bottom, so that way you don't have to have any weird stuff, any add-ons. You have your DPS track here, you have your healing done, you have your interrupts if you want them as well. For example, you can just change it here, over heal, interrupts, whatever you need, just like a details tab would have, just like those DPS meters would have. All of those things, weak cores and stuff like this, are integrated into the game. That way you don't have to, spend an insane amount of time, just going in there and setting up your game. Also, it's honestly way easier to understand. Whenever I'm playing this game, whenever I'm actually fighting bosses or enemies, it's just a bit more clearer. Unlike WoW, which seems a little bit like there's too many things going on, which I really appreciate. The dungeon experience in MMOs is pretty cool, but sometimes it kind of sucks that you just can't, you can't tell what's going on because of how hard it is and how convoluted it is. It doesn't really seem like this is the case in here. The progression is very interesting as well. Essentially, the way that you do it is that the harder of the dungeons you do, the more things you get, the more abilities you get, the more gear you get, the more talents you get. And there doesn't seem to be too many different types of abilities you can get, at least now. I'm sure that eventually we'll get that, but for now it seems very, very simple in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty cool the way that you don't need to level up. You don't have to, well, you're gonna gear up, but the way that you actually get in the new abilities is by actually completing plus 1, then a +2 you get another ability, +3 another one, and so on and so on. But you have to complete it in the time, otherwise you don't get it, which maybe is a bit too punishing, I guess you could argue. But in my opinion, it's kind of cool because you don't see the little leveling bar. Just know that as soon as you actually complete the dungeon, you will be fine. And actually this resulted, in my experience, into some cool little stuff, like, we fail a dungeon with a group, but then we're like, hey, we know how to do it now. Let's do it again so we can actually get a reward. And that's the way they did it. And you know, I met some cool little people doing this, which I think is actually pretty cool. The heroes are pretty fun. I think they have some cool little abilities, some cool little stuff. I think all of them seem very interesting. Personally, this warrior kind of thing that you have is actually a very interesting type of warrior that you have. Usually, it's the same thing as always, you know, big guy with big hammer, you do a lot of damage. But here's the thing, there's a lot of like abilities that are off of the global cooldown, and you have this little bar that you have to press this auto attack, I guess, before this red thing completes. And this way you can actually, there's a lot of skill to be had in there, because of course you don't want to activate it too early, because then you're not going to be able to press any other buttons. But of course at the same time you want to press it, you don't want to press it late, because otherwise you're going to miss your auto attack. And also your abilities like Skull Crusher and Hammerstorm will indeed also refresh your auto attack. As you can see, refresh your auto attack, like you can see here, and you will actually cancel it. So you want to do it right after your auto attack. There's a lot of little things that you can do in order to do better damage. It's also very cool that most healers and tanks also do a lot of damage, not as much as DPSers, but they still contribute, making it a bit more interesting to actually play around with. That being said, let's go for a few of the bad things of this game right now. For example, you don't really have customization in the game. All the heroes look the same. You know, there's just, these are the heroes, this is how they look, and that's it. You can't really change anything about it. Yeah, the gear kind of changes a little bit. You can see here, let me just go into my stash. You can see that there's other types of armor I have, but they look the same, right? I can just click on it. Yeah, the color changes, but that's about it. At the end of the day, it's the same, and I think that's a bit boring. I'm not sure if I'm completely a lot of people are saying like, oh, there should not be any heroes at all. I'm not sure if I would agree with that. I think it's okay to have in a game like this, where it's only a hub, there's no open world, to have heroes like this, so you have a multiple types of classes. Eventually, otherwise it would be kind of hard to tell what is going on. But at the same time, I think it would be okay to be able to customize your heroes as well. Maybe change the hair that you have, maybe change some of the armor, something like that along those lines, right? I think that would be completely okay. Some sort of customization so you can build yourself, so you can feel like you're indeed the hero that you are, instead of just everyone looking exactly the same, which is the case right now. If you go around the town, you're gonna see that everyone looks the same, and oh, that's just not something I really like. Being like myself in my game, and I like looking like the way that I want to look, and I want to look different than everyone else. It's fun. I want to do me, you know. And you can read this in this game, which I think is a lot of people. I think something that a lot of people are complaining about, especially because it's an MMO. Well, it's an MMO. Like MMO players really like that. So yeah, they're probably gonna have to work on that to make people kind of happy. A lot of quality of life problems. The servers are a bit memed. Every time you finish a dungeon, you get kicked. Almost nothing in the UI works. Like if I try to click on the chat, like if I click it here, it doesn't work. But if I click it here, it does. It's hard to invite people to the parties. There's just so many little scuffed little things that honestly don't work very well. Of course, there's the player test. It only lasts a week, so I understand. But still, it does kind of suck. The combat also, it's not very impactful, I don't think. Like it just doesn't feel like I'm really doing a lot of damage here. Like I don't know, like every time I hit with a big attack, it just doesn't feel like I do. The numbers, like the little numbers here for the for each of the attacks, also don't really feel very impactful. I think there's something weird going on, and they really need to fix it, because the combat should be fun, it's interesting, but it just doesn't feel like that. And that is a very important part in an MMO. In any type of game, the combat needs to be fun. If it's not, we're in some trouble. I'm also kind of afraid that, you know, we have the gear is not going to be as interesting. I cannot tell for sure, guys, because I haven't been able to play the game as much. It's only been 1 day. This is kind of an first impressions. But you can see here that you can go into the Artificer. You can see that there's like these little gems. I'm not really sure what these do and how you get them, but they do seem to be existing. You can scrap things as well to get more gold to upgrade your gear, but all these things seem very like just vertical and not very horizontal. It doesn't seem like there's anything here that I'm like, oh yes, this is the way that I'm gonna make my own build. I'm a bit scared of the customization in this regard. I think it's okay to have a lot of, you know, heroes, to be able to have a lot of variety, but I'm also scared that maybe this is not gonna be enough to be able to make it. Most MMO players are gonna be having fun and, you know, being able to play this game forever and ever, which is kind of the point of these games. At the end of the day, like, I think that makes WoW very fun is the fact that you get better gear, you get trinkets, you feel like way more powerful depending on what you get, what type of gear you get. And it's been simplified a lot in World of Warcraft, which has been a problem, I think. A lot of people have kind of complained about that. And but it's still there, and it's one of the biggest reasons why it's so fun to just progress and get better gear and go into dungeons after and just blasting everything and knowing that you got an item that now makes you way more powerful. I'm not sure how much of that we're gonna get here. We're gonna see. It's gonna be a bit hard to tell. I don't have as much experience, but it's something that is worrying me a little bit concerning the lack of customization. The talents are just not that big anyway, either. Like, you know, you can just go here and check. There's only 3 versions of them. Of course, there's gonna be more, but is this really gonna be enough to make ourselves a special, you know, different types of builds? Not really sure. I feel like we're gonna end up in a situation where there's only one type of build that you play, and that's about it. But maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? It's very hard to tell. They only have there's not gonna be that many more talents. Okay, it's only 2 more rows eventually. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. I really think they probably should be putting a bit more effort into the complexity of the game. And for last thing, interrupts. We have interrupts in this game. If you guys don't know, interrupts are just, you know, there's a little bar that just grows on your target, and you have to interrupt it in order for the target to stop their attack. This is something I really don't like in MMOs. I don't like it in WoW. But it's really not that bad in this game. Usually, there seems to be like a... what's the word? It's very easy to tell whenever one thing you have to actually interrupt it. Everybody knows you have to interrupt it, and you know, someone does. And as long as someone does it, it's okay. I just get a bit worried that it's gonna end up like in, you know, very high keys in World of Warcraft where everyone has to do the exact perfect interrupts, which I guess is what people usually like. I just personally don't like it. And that's gonna be the end game. Personally, I would rather something like, you know, there's a big attack that everyone has to interrupt, and unless you get 5 interrupts, well, I guess there's 4 people in the party in this game, unless you get 4 interrupts in that lane, it doesn't break. Some of that, I think, will be way more fun, instead of just having multiple nameplates that you're gonna have to interrupt, and just moving your mouse insanely hard to be able to do it, especially when the mouse over macro to interrupt, use your interrupt over your mouse is not existing in this game right now. You have to click on the actual target instead of just hovering your mouse, which I think is just not good. So yeah, personally, that's what I like. I actually like dodges as well more, like something like Throne of Liberty or blocks, you know, like, you know, you have the interrupt bar, but at the end of it, you have to block, you have to press the button, and you don't have to be targeting the enemy. I think that's way more fun and way more interactive and way more impactful, and you can see the attack happening as well, instead of just interrupting it and not seeing the attack either. So all these things, I think, are better systems than interrupts. I know that some people like interrupts. I just think there's no reason, there's objectively better in my opinion. That's why I would rather this game having. That being said, this game does a lot of good things for dungeons, and I really hope that WoW can actually go in here and then yeah, just try their best to learn a little bit from whatever this game does, and hopefully they do survive and they actually make a better game that can actually compete with World of Warcraft, so they actually have some way, you know, to actually blast harder and get those things that are not good in the game out of them. That being said, the Mythic Plus new season is going to be in a few days, actually tomorrow, I guess, for NA, and the day after for you. So guess what, guys? It's gonna be, you know, that they fixed a lot of things from Mythic Plus. So if you want to try out this game to see if you would actually be interested in playing something like WoW, it's a great way of doing it. And for me, it's gonna be great because I'm gonna be doing a season with no add-ons and see how far I can actually get in and do it. So it's gonna be a good, you know, a good comparison. How is it to play this game with no add-ons compared to World of Warcraft with no add-ons? So definitely go to my Twitch to watch that, of course. And this week, go to my Ko-Fi if you want to support my content. And see you guys around. Love you.